Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. We have had a couple of technical difficulties, and one of our speaker groups just arrived, so we're going to move things around a little bit. My name is Kelly Gonzalez, and I'm from Underline. I will be your moderator for today. And our innovation session is focused on scholarly communication. We have four different presentations for you today, and I'm going to explain how the format works. Basically, each of the presenters here today gets an allotment of 5 minutes to give their presentation. Afterwards, we will have plenty of time for Q&A from the audience, so prepare your questions now and have them ready to go. There is a mic in the aisle up here in the front, so once it's time for Q&A, please feel free to step up to the mic. And it's important that you do so that we can preserve this information for the video recording afterwards, okay? So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the first speaker so we can get started today. And we are hearing from Amanda French from Crossref, and she will be talking about Do More with ROAR. I'm supposed to do a little ROAR, but the Research Organization Registry. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I am Amanda French. I am Technical Community Manager for ROAR. And I'd like to actually encourage you as I talk to go to roar.org on your phones or laptops. I will not be offended, and play around with it. Should I move this into slideshow, or how do I? Okay, great. So why should you be interested in ROAR? I have a little video here that shows one of the major problems with messy institutional data. You should be interested in ROAR if you run an institutional repository where people are entering author affiliations as messy text strings, or if you're tracking your institution's research outputs, or if you're managing OA agreements that are negotiated at an institutional level. All of those activities require disambiguated institutional data and metadata. So one of the, did it miss my video thing? Okay, hang on. Here's my video, and then it should play on click, and it's not because it's,
So let's see.
I need to play it.
Okay, so
Click. Okay. Well, we're not going to be able to see our live video of a search interface in which, I can't see any, I can't.
yeah, I'll do it.
Can't see where it is. Great. It's not going to click, so just go forward. We're going to, oh wait.
And it is here, so
Yeah, I know, but I can't.
real quick. It is on the screen that I'm looking at, so we're going to try to drag it over.
Okay. Yes? Play? Video.
Let's make
All
sure
right.
the sound works.
This is an affiliation search in a search interface. We are looking for the Krakow University of Economics. All research articles associated with the Krakow University of Economics. When you spell it with 2 Ks, you get 21 results. When you spell Krakow with 2 Cs, you get different results when you're searching for the research articles written by authors affiliated with that institution. And if you want to enter the name of the institution in Polish, because the institution is actually in Poland, you can see that we get 2 results, all of which are different. That is an illustration of the problem. That is why you should be interested in ROAR. I'm going to try to get back. I'm
okay.
just not. Okay. Please get me back to my slides. All right.
And
I went to a lot of trouble to make that video, so thank you for sitting through it.
Let me just make sure your cursor's back over there. So, okay, try now.
All right.
Wait, let me make sure.
Not. I'm just trying to advance my slides.
Okay, try now.
Okay. All right. All right. Let me tell you a little bit about ROAR. I'm sure I'm probably already over time. Okay. So ROAR, the Research Organization Registry is a global, community-led registry of open, persistent identifiers for nearly 103,000 research organizations from around the world. Universities, research centers, labs, funders, publishers, scholarly associations, and companies. ROR's REST API is entirely free with no paid tiers, and ROR is not a membership organization. It is supported by the operational budgets of Crossref, DataCite, and the California Digital Library. ROR records, here's a front-end view of a ROR record, are freely available on the open web under a CC0 license, and anyone can request a change to a ROR record or the addition of a new ROR record. You can see the link right there, submit a curation request. Easily verifiable changes to ROR records are approved by the ROR curation lead, while trickier requests are discussed and decided on by our International Volunteer Curation Board. One typical use for ROR, and here we have a nice little GIF that is working properly, is in what we call a type ahead widget. This is actually the Open Journal Systems. We do have a ROR plugin for Open Journal Systems. So you can see that, in fact, if you're an author and you're identifying which institution you're affiliated with, you can type in Catholic University of Portugal, and it will come back with the sort of primary name for that institution, which is in fact in Portuguese, as well as the ROR identifier. Many institutions are adopting ROR. Not all of them are listed here. One that actually isn't listed here is, for instance, an institutional repository at Boise State University. So they have ScholarWorks, which is their institutional repository. You can't see the ROR IDs, but they are there on the back end. And because they are there, they are going through to Crossref metadata. So you can see in the Crossref API, in the JSON, there is a ROR right there, identifying Boise State University as the publisher of this work. But also, if we were scrolling down further in that data, you would be able to see that the author affiliations are also marked by ROR IDs. And this particular article has a co-author from Carleton College, which also has its ROR ID in Crossref metadata. So I'm going to end here. Some of the sort of what I think of as aggregational services are very excited about ROR and have already adopted it. If you haven't edited your ORCID profile recently, go in, pretend to add a new organization, and see that that organizational affiliation is now driven by ROR. You can see ROR IDs when you click on the details in your profile of your ORCID profile. You can also go to DataCite Commons, which if you haven't already visited it, I recommend it. It's a really wonderful sort of visualization of the research outputs of a university. And their organization browse is driven by ROR. You can even see the RORs in the URL. And then finally, if any of you are familiar with Microsoft Academic Graph, the successor to that is OpenAlex, which is about to launch a sort of a public website and as well as an API. And they have taken a great many messy text strings of author affiliations and matched them to ROR IDs. So that entire large project is built on ROR IDs. That's all. Thank you. Sorry for the issues.
Is there anybody else going right now?
Thank you so much, Amanda. So our next speaker, our dynamic duo coming up next, traveled the furthest to get here. They're Heather Gilbert and Tyler Mobley from the College of Charleston, long way away. And they're speaking on Come Fly With Me, Unleashing Your Oral History program through Aviary.
Hi, everyone. My colleague and I today are going to be talking to you about oral history projects that are managed within the library and how we use the AV Preserves software Aviary to kind of help us manage those projects. So oral history projects are becoming more and more popular on university campuses, and as such, we're seeing libraries in the position where they're no longer serving as purely a repository, but they're serving as managers of those projects, and they're asked to really participate more. This can present a challenge for librarians and archivists because we're not necessarily conventionally trained in oral history projects, and there's a lot of considerations that are necessary for them. So some suggestions for librarians and archivists that we've learned through our shared experiences would be to be sure to have conversations about expectations, access, and the actual donation of the finished, of the finished oral histories to the library. Those conversations should happen with your faculty who are conducting the oral history projects, as well as partially with the folks who are actually participating in them. We also recommend that you have a good digital platform that will provide a lot of access to those oral history projects. We at the College of Charleston really want to promote broad access to our oral history projects. However, depending on the thematic subject of those projects, you may have to incorporate considerations such as embargoing content for privacy purposes. We also really want to recommend that everybody become very brushed up on what a good informed consent form looks like, and to have those considerations in place in that informed consent that both protect the interviewee as well as the institution, and just to be sure to brush up on any sort of other documentation that your institution might require for oral histories. You should also have a mechanism for submission. We were recently asked to manage an oral history project where our faculty outside of the library conducted the oral histories themselves, but after that point, the library had to manage the rest of it. So having a good submission process can be really helpful and can promote efficiency. Also, internal workflows for things like transcription, metadata creation, and kind of ultimate fulfillment of the oral history program. So we recommend don't reinvent the wheel, but be sure to brush up on the basics of oral histories. These are 4 resources that we found invaluable. The Oral History Association has wonderful resources on their website. The Smithsonian Institution Archives has a nice little one-page that gives you a really quick introduction to kind of even what oral histories are and how to do them. University of Kentucky has fantastic resources through the Louis B. Nunn Center, but the Baylor Institute for Oral History we love, in addition to having a website that is full of really easy to understand resources that cover the soup to nuts end of oral history management. What it also really does is they offer a 2-day intensive online workshop each semester that is very cost effective and affordable and really kind of helps librarians and archivists even understand the entire oral history project, including how to participate and record oral histories, which can be really helpful when you're working with faculty who that is their specialty. And so it kind of gives you a shared language when you're trying to help explain why the library may have very specific considerations that they haven't thought of. So when it comes to submission forms, we are a big fan of developing a submission form so those faculty don't just hand you a thumb drive, but they actually get that content to you in a way that is really useful for you. And we use those submission forms to actually collect metadata. Your interviewer is going to be the person who knows the most about the topic because they've spent the most time with the interviewee. So we ask them to actually give us a lot of data that we can easily migrate into metadata fields. And you can create submission forms using a very common software that your library probably already has accessible. So when it comes to transcription, we really like to use an online transcription service to give us a base transcription product. We personally use rev.com, but Temi and Trent also do a very good job. We recommend that you pay to include timestamping. Timestamping can let you leverage some features of your oral history discovery platform. And we also make sure that the interviewer knows that they have to review the transcript and provide corrections for us. They're the ones who are having that conversation, so they will be the one who is most up on that topic and can really help us correct names, spellings, places, etc. So this is actually what a record in Aviary looks like, and I wanted to show you that all of the metadata in the description field, and if this was a live thing, I could scroll and scroll and scroll and show you a lot more metadata, but just to give you a taste, this was all generated by the person doing the actual interviewing. So the librarians themselves didn't have to try to figure out how to describe this. We leveraged the power of the interviewer and the scholar who was doing the interviewing to help us better describe our content. There's also a transcript field. That timestamping I mentioned, that is key because as you can see it there, all of those timestamps are clickable and they will help you jump to that part of the interview. This is really great because a product like Aviary has a full text transcript searchable field. So you can search for a very specific topic and then when it shows you that result, you can click right to it. So if that topic is 45 minutes in, you click the timestamp, you're right there to listen to it. We also like to leverage the supplemental files field where we have created a PDF of the transcript because in a platform like Aviary, that PDF is downloadable. And you can make that transcript go full screen, but that downloadable feature, we found that scholars really, really use when they're conducting their research. And now I'm going to quickly hand it over to my colleague to talk about how we incorporated it into our oral history platform. Thank you.
Hello. Okay, so it's going to be a speed run. Let's go. We operate a digital library called the Low Country Digital Library out of the College of Charleston. It's sort of a partnership of multiple institutions. And it is something of a legacy oral history platform already in that it already houses about 600 plus oral histories over the past few years. Those files are held in AWS and streamed to a pretty basic player currently on item result views in the catalog. We do have transcripts, but they're just embedded PDFs, unlike the nice transcript interface you just saw in Aviary. So it was a functional enough system, but not really anyone's ideal oral history situation. That's where Aviary came in for us. And I'm going to be very quick on this. This is the technology stack of LCDL. All I really want to bring out on this is that we had an existing stack you see on the right, but adding Aviary to our platform just boops that little green square to the left. So we suddenly just have a third website, and we had to figure out how to integrate that with an existing catalog and user interface. So presenting a united front. This would be like 20 minutes of slides, so let's do it in 1 minute. The shareholder experience. We have partners and staff who have expectations for the needs and sort of the experience of LCDL. Partners signed up and shared their materials with us with the expectation that their items would be in the LCDL catalog and on their website. We can't necessarily shunt 600 items off to a different website and say, you're a great partner, go over here. Same staff have been trained in workflows and expectations of how we load items and how LCDL works on the back end. So we had to solve that and a user experience issue of our users already expect to find photographs, documents, oral histories all in one singular catalog. What happens when we add a third-party website there? And as a developer, how do I do that? If I had to stop right now, the answer is just use APIs. If you have an API, use the API. They're great. For those who don't know, that is an application programming interface. Imagine you're on your website. You want to click the View All Items button on your website, and it shows you all the items. What an API does, it provides a Get All Items call for a developer to use, maybe using a script or an application, so that they can get that data in maybe text and use it elsewhere. What that let us do is automate a lot of the metadata ingest, generating import packages for Aviary, and handling a lot of the user interface stuff. I'm going fast. Okay. So, in short, what we were able to do, leveraging APIs from Aviary, ResourceBase, and Apache Solr, which runs our main LCDL catalog, is, I'm going to have to read this. Items are loaded into ResourceBase as they always have been. That's our digital asset management system. Then using the ResourceBase API, we generate an export package that can easily be imported into Aviary. Then we leverage the Aviary API to index those items directly into our existing catalog. So what that allows us to do ultimately is, as you see in the image, we have legacy oral histories in the old platform living in the same search results and the same relevancy with new items from Aviary. Similarly, when you go to item views, instead of, all right, one more sentence, I'm sorry. Instead of the old basic item views, we can leverage Aviary's embed functionality to provide all the user interface experience we expect from Aviary into our existing LCDL catalog. Thank you very much.
So what's even more impressive about that is that it was originally supposed to be a 20-minute conversation, and they got it down to 8, so that was pretty impressive. So just so that you know, Heather and Tyler will also be available for questions and conversation after if there's additional information that you didn't quite catch right away. So loading up now is our third presentation, and good. Okay. And so I'm going to introduce you to Alexis Macklin from Carlow University and Tim Schlack from Robert Morris University, and they will be speaking on values, vision, and voice, a toolkit for navigating open access and the changing landscape of scholarly publication.
Okay, well, while Tim's loading us up, the last 3 slides are the most important of them, so I'm just going to get started and let you know this has been kind of a Murphy's Law day. We started off, or either that or Goldilocks and the 3 Bears. We started off in the first room, it was too big, second room was too small. We're just right here. So we're finally here. So Tim and I got an oh my God, I'm losing it, IMLS grant 2 years ago to start talking about what open access would mean for small and mid-sized universities. We had no idea that there was going to be this federal mandate coming out in August that kind of actually spearheaded our work and said, you're really relevant right now. It turns out that people really didn't know how to have the conversations on their campuses, and so we used a human-centered design approach to get us from point A to point B. And since Tim is up here, he's gonna work my slides for me. So we decided, okay, well, if we had 25 people involved in this community of practice. We got 25 small and mid-sized universities to work with us in this human-centered design approach, and we designed a toolkit to help other folks who might be having trouble having the conversation about open access to have that on their campuses. And so we started putting together this toolkit. Next slide is our stakeholders. We did a human-centered design approach on how to do stakeholder mapping. We came up with a lot of stakeholders. I think that's surprised us so much that we had so many, but of them, we had 10 that kept coming up for all of us, and they're listed here. I'm not going to go over them all. I think they're pretty much, you're looking at them and you're saying, yeah, I get that. I think the point is that there are a lot, and it's both internal and external to our campuses, not just to our libraries. So we then did a SWOT analysis, and we looked at what the big buckets were. What are our real threats, and where are our real opportunities? And we determined that the values impacting our decision-making came down to 3 things. It was collections, budget, and infrastructure. And the SWOT actually showed that the budget was both a weakness and a threat, and it was controlled by 2 outcomes that both had opportunities. We decided to go with the opportunity associated with a strength, agreeing that the first leg of the journey should be knowing where we are starting from. So in this case, our point of departure was a research profile, and we started looking at how to build from our value of collections. We know we're strong in collections, but we also know that our budgets are decreasing. So how do we know where our folks are publishing currently? Where is our open access happening now? And we did a Scopus, we used Scopus for this. You could use anything, you could use Web of Science, but we used Scopus, and it was a really great grounding point for us to know where to get started. From there, we started building, go ahead, next slide. Oh, you're there, okay. From there, we decided to build out a bank of questions that we could collectively use to start with surveys, interviews, just to have those conversations going. And we're collecting these questions and organizing them into a bank of questions that others could use to start spearheading the conversations on their campuses. What we realized in our conversations is we have a real perception of where we are. We think we are at this place, and we think that as we have these conversations around OA, we are at this beautiful, fluid thing where the libraries and the librarians are central, and we're working hand in hand with the researchers, and we still have our subscriptions and our institutional repository and our consortial relationships are on one side. And our researchers are working on this other side with their society repositories and their network of scholars, and there's this happy symbiotic relationship. The truth of the matter is, the reality of us is that we've got 2 ecosystems happening. The first ecosystem is in the way we've always done business. We still have our institutional repositories, but we're realizing that those institutional repositories probably are not going to meet the mandates for open access. And so what's happening is we've got this whole other ecosystem happening, and if we don't join that conversation now, we have a doomsday slide, folks, and it looks like this. We're concerned that if we don't start getting into the conversation now, and I know some of you will argue with me that, oh no, our provosts are going to come to us asking for our help. They may not. And if they don't, what's going to end up happening, particularly for small and mid-sized institutions, is we're either going to not be part of the scholarly conversation at all because we just can't afford to be, or we're going to end up falling somewhere out of alignment with our universities, and as our subscriptions become smaller and smaller, our value is going to decrease more and more, and we're going to be out of the picture completely. In this one, you can see the silos where we've got our sharing platforms and our open data repositories that are not run by us, and the government funding that's coming in directly to the researcher, going to the provost who's handling, either the provost's office or the Office of Research is handling those transformative agreements, the APC charges, et cetera. And Google Scholar, or, I didn't want to put it up here because Elsevier might be in the room. Elsevier will take over on the other side of things. So anyway, at the end of the day, what are we doing? We're building out a toolkit, and in this toolkit, we've got a stakeholder map. We've got ways for you to do the values inventory. We've got the SWOT analysis, the research profile guide, the bank of questions I talked about, and a communications template. We're working with a communications professional because librarians can do a lot of things, but we're not PR people. So at the end of the day, we've got a QR code. You can follow us. We hope to have this kit launched by February, so talk to us again at ACRL. It will be in Pittsburgh. Thank you very much. Everybody coming. We are Pittsburghers, true to form. So there you go, people. Thank you very much for your time.
I'm going to leave it up really quickly for a second just in case you want to take a picture of the QR code. I saw a lot of applause for Pittsburgh. I'm in Allentown, the eastern part of Pennsylvania. Thank you very much. Okay, got it? Okay, thanks.
I practiced this switch out yesterday, and we're going to hope that it goes smoothly today.
It should. And while she's putting things together, I'm going to introduce our fourth speaker. And this is Catherine Hellman from UNC Greensboro, and she will be speaking about creating a river out of many streams. I love these titles, they're so creative. One academic library's approach to managing film content. And we're up and running. Good. Thanks, Catherine.
Good morning. My name is Catherine Heilman, and I am the Electronic Resources Librarian at UNC Greensboro. I've been there for about a year and a half. Today I'm going to share the story of how we wrangled our streaming media collection into some proper order. Streaming media is a vital component of our collection, and our acquisition of it has increased significantly over the past few years. You'll notice we had tons of sessions across this conference talking about streaming media. It's all over the place. However, at my institution, we do not have an electronic resources management system. We have homegrown tools and some established workflows and some really smart people that keep us afloat. But as a new employee and the only e-resources librarian, I have had a lot of trouble getting a grasp on what our collection actually entailed. People are coming to me all the time about one title or whole packages or platforms, and I had a really challenging time trying to figure out what we had. I didn't know where to look for it. I didn't know how to basically deal with it. So that was because we had a lot of variables. We could purchase a film on, say, December 3rd, one title, and it could be a license term period for 1 year, 3 years, or perpetual. And in that one title, I might have to review a license that has very specific, unique terms for the use of that title. We also negotiate terms for big packages like Canopy and Avon and have database access, but even within that database access, we're still licensing one-off films for 1, 3, or perpetual access. And it is just mind-blowingly complicated to keep track of all those details. So there were also workflow considerations, to catalog or not. I'm going to touch on this a little bit later, but it is definitely a big part of the equation. When we were lucky, we are WMS users for our ILS. We were able to just simply click on a collection in Collection Manager, and it all worked, and everybody could link out to it and search for it easily. That's generally not the case, though. We also need to consider how to keep track of the license expiration date. We bought a film on December 3rd, we bought a film on January 9th, and those are all rolling expiration dates from 1 to 3 years. We also had a policy when I came on board where if we had films that had restrictions, faculty members needed to basically ask for access to that permalink to put in their Canvas site every term. It would expire. It was set up in box to expire, so they couldn't get to it. But after reviewing the licenses, we reversed that policy, and we were able to just let them have kind of continued access as long as they are able to authenticate into our system. It's also something we need to consider when anybody requests a film. How many years do we buy it for? That's a really challenging question, and I actually don't have an answer to that. But it is certainly something we think about. And then mediation. Right now, we're pretty much mediating every film request that comes in, although during the pandemic, it was my understanding that we had a situation where it was some of the packages were like a PDA free-for-all where people could just go in, but then cost ballooned and we couldn't do that anymore. So we were creating an unsustainable future, and I can't abide. I can't live that life in my job situation. So we had no accurate assessment of what we actually had. I just didn't know. We had inefficient record keeping. We had about 3 people who were working on different aspects of this, and we were keeping things in emails. Sometimes we had shared spreadsheets, sometimes we had our own. I think there were paper files. They were not mine, but I know they're there. And our content discovery was not optimized. Most of the titles we buy, we don't create a catalog record for to search for it, because if it expires, it creates a dead link. And then our end users are frustrated because the links don't work, but we just didn't know that it expired because we have no way to track it. So it was just simply too much. So I took a breath and I knew that we could do better. And honestly, all we needed was a database. But in our budgetary climate, I knew I was never going to be able to get approval for some kind of commercial product to help us manage it. But I did suspect that if I presented the proposal to the dean who oversees our IT, library support staff, and technical services where I work, that I could get the support and time of some of my colleagues who have really excellent skills that I don't have. So I knew what I wanted my database to do. I knew what I wanted it to look like and how I wanted it to function, but I don't possess the skills to actually code it and make it happen. So I needed approval from the dean, and I got it. Once I did that, I was able to meet with some colleagues, and we refined the requirements. I basically told them everything I wanted, and surprisingly, they could do all of it. I didn't have one single requirement turned down. I also had to get buy-in from my colleagues in technical services, acquisitions folks, and cataloging colleagues, because they're the ones who are going to use it. I'm actually not like the primary user of this, but as the e-resources librarian, I had to figure out a way to make our lives better. And it led to really a wonderful collaboration. I was new, so I got to engage with colleagues in a really fun way to develop something that would help us, and it was great. And people brought a lot of new ideas, and we did some fine-tuning, because I obviously didn't think of everything. It was a team effort. And now, I think, this is why I plugged in my computer, because I had to log in here. I'm going to show you the database. This is what it looked like. It's pretty simple, right? You'll see the fields at the top: vendor, producer, title, URL, begin date, end date, license type. These are all the fields, the pieces of information that we couldn't keep track of altogether. But what this database does is it allows us on January 3rd, when we go in to buy the title, we can simply create a new license. And we put this film in there, and we have its data forever. But my favorite thing about this database, these are all just a simple form to fill in, is its search feature. If I want to know how many perpetual titles did we buy in fiscal year 21, I can simply pull a CSV file from this form. Or if I want to know how many BBC titles do we have. I mean, there's the questions and anything that I want to know, it pretty much will tell me by a simple search. Or I can simply pull the whole swath of data in one CSV and filter that Excel however I so choose. So going back into here, final slide. So the results. So after this project, which took us about 6 months of intermittent work on it, we have a reliable account. We went through and we found every title that we have some kind of license for. We've increased discovery in our catalog. Oh, I forgot one of the important things. It does automated notices when it expires. So when the title, this was like the main feature of the whole thing. when a title hits its expiration date, it sends an automatic notice to our cataloging team with the link, and they are able to remove it from the catalog. So therefore, we are now cataloging our titles and optimizing discovery. Sorry, forgot to mention that. And we have easily generated reports for analytical purposes, which is my jam as an e-resources librarian. So that's our database, and I was happy to share it with y'all. Thank you.
See, Catherine did that as a mic drop moment at the end on purpose. Sure. I'd like to invite my distinguished panel of speakers to come up to the front again. And so this is the fun part where you get to ask all those questions. Not sure about you, but I've definitely been inspired by all the innovative different approaches and software developments that our speakers have presented here today. And again, the mic is in the middle of the floor in the front, and please just step up and ask the questions that you have. And again, we need you to do that so that we can preserve the video quality for the presentation afterwards. Everybody, have a seat if you like. Whatever you need to do. Don't all come up at once. So I'm going to ask, oh, that was the timer. I'm going to ask a question just to get everything started, and this is actually to everyone, so you'll each get a chance to answer the question. So obviously, all of these approaches that you've taken are quite innovative, and you've always explained some of the pitfalls that you come across, some of the challenges and things like that. What would you say would be the most rewarding aspect of this innovative service that you've provided? We'll start with you, Catherine.
It was really just, that's a complicated question. I mean, really, it was just to make all of our lives easier. We were becoming overburdened by our inability to keep records and track of all of the moving parts, and just having a simple, searchable, filterable database really has like freed up a lot of time. It's given us a little bit of time back in our life, and that's probably, even though it's not necessarily innovative, getting back time is a gift, I would say.
I think the most satisfying part about not just working with ROAR, but the existence of the ROAR project is that it is, it's in line with open community values. So there are other organizational identifiers, but ROAR being, you know, it seems like it's actually, it's an innovation, but that should have happened, 20 years ago. Completely open, completely community curated, really solving a problem that we all have with, people entering organization names differently in all the systems and all of the research ecosystem. So that's the thing that I like most about ROAR.
For us, it was kind of providing order to chaos. There was an exponential interest in our campus on oral history projects, and while we had a mechanism for delivering and providing access, it wasn't a very great mechanism. And so for us, I think it was finding a way to leverage the knowledge of the scholars conducting the oral histories to kind of efficiently create access points for those that were more user-friendly and rewarding.
I think for us, the biggest thing was the relationships we built and the people that we were able to connect with, and realize that it isn't really, we started off thinking this was a small and mid-sized university problem, but it's really not. It's a universal problem that we're all having, and maybe we can find solutions together.
Thank you. You have a question? Thanks.
Yeah, on the toolkit, I think the QR code I was getting was prompting me to log in to a form. Was that? Yeah.
Oops. Okay, well, email us.
All right. Thanks.
It's easy to find us, so go ahead and email us, and we'll send you a link, and anybody who's interested can just join the community.
Thank you very much. And I have a question for Amanda. Are you finding that publishers and funders are working with you to add that as a field into submission forms?
Yes, so certainly not so much funders, publishers definitely. Funders don't, Roar is integrated into Proposal Central. And actually the Department of Energy also has its sort of funding application systems, and they've been huge adopters of Roar, and they are doing that. So funder adoption for sure. The thing about publishers and submission systems is that you have, Crossref itself has 17,500 members, and oddly enough, I just learned at our annual meeting that the essentially universities and institutions who are Crossref members very slightly outnumber what we think of as the traditional publishers. So universities are publishing, libraries are publishing, scholarly associations are publishing. So all of those are members of Crossref, minting DOIs and all of that. And so sometimes those institutional members of Crossref have more control over their own systems, sort of front to end. So in some ways, they, I think, in general, with lots of exceptions, are finding it easier to integrate. With large publishers, they're reliant on service providers, on vendor systems. So the publishers themselves don't necessarily have control over whether or not to build in Roar IDs to their submission systems. A lot of the smaller publishers use OJS. I actually showed, the OJS plugin that does exist. We're looking at developing that further so that it can have more functionality. And then a lot of the sort of mid-range publishers, some people are adding the Roar IDs in JATS XML. They just generate XML, put it right in the JATS XML, and send it to Crossref that way, sort of without systems really, other than Oxygen or whatever. And then actually we have Miguel Peralta here from Rockefeller University Press, who is a big Roar supporter, and so you can ask him. I would love to hear, in fact, more. You can come to the mic and tell us all about how Rockefeller University Press is using Roar. We'll put you on the spot a little bit.
So thank you very much.
Yeah, please talk. People need to.
Much better. Yeah, so as I was introduced, my name is Miguel Peralta, and I work for Rockefeller University Press. And so I'm not actually the best person to talk about this. That would be Rob O'Donnell, our production director. He can teach. Oh, sorry. So our production director could speak more about our technical use of Roar. I will say that from my perspective, I use it largely for interpreting sales analysis. And one of the first things I did actually when I joined Rockefeller was before we even sort of got to the technical point that we're at now, I applied Roar IDs going back into time, not just for corresponding authors, but contributing authors, so that we can start to model how we transform our business into a fully open access business. Roar is great. I mean, it's a really, really easy and natural and intuitive thing to use. I think it has learned from a lot of the other sort of PID issues. It strikes a nice balance between granularity and sort of more top-level view. Yeah, so I don't know. What else is there to say except for I highly encourage people to adopt it. I think it's really flexible with other PIDs. So we actually used Ringgold previously, and so a lot of our data had Ringgold, and we were able to sort of use a mapping system to take the Ringgold and make that into Roar IDs. In addition to our publication data, we're also applying Roar IDs to our subscription data. So we really have a holistic view of all of our customer activity, and we're ingesting that into our platform too, so that really we can have one view bridging the difference distance between subscription data and authorship data.
And is your platform built and managed in-house, or are you sort of?
We use Silverchair.
Okay.
So any publishers that are here that use Silverchair can either speak to me, or I can connect you with Rob, or you can speak directly to Silverchair and take it from there. But they have that field, and actually I think they have that field for, you can use any PID, in fact, although we definitely encourage you to use Roar.
Great. Thank you.
And sorry about the audio. I'm not used to speaking in microphones, actually.
That's okay. And it's a tall person thing, too. I can relate.
We've got our struggles.
And I'm married to a professor who does a lot of research, too, so I'm like listening to all of these things and make sure he gets his ID straight. Do we have a question coming up to the mic? Great. Sorry, now we have to adjust it.
From tall people to short people problems. and I will make sure that the mic doesn't fall out. So I'm just going to follow up on this, on the Roar and Pitapalooza thing. One of the big challenges at my institution is distinguishing between Roar and Ringgold, et cetera, because if you type in the institution, and I just tried this to see whether it was any different, we get a whole bunch of different institutions with the same name, and there's no easy way to see, oh, is this Roar or is it Ringgold? And I was wondering whether there are any plans to try and make it easier for people to sort that out, because I would love to make it easy for folks to switch from Ringgold to Roar.
Yeah. Which system was this in, Paige?
In ORCID.
Oh, in ORCID.
Yeah.
Right. So ORCID is supporting both, yes.
Indeed.
And so if you do sort of try to go add a new affiliation, you know, it will sort of give you the option in a way of using the Roar ID powered organization or the Ringgold powered organization. So one of the things that I think we would like to do at Roar, but may never happen, is to sort of crosswalk Roar with Ringgold. Roar is already crosswalked with a lot of other external identifiers, funder IDs, ISNIs, Wikidata IDs, and grid IDs, which obviously, but the problem with that is that because Ringgold is, like, you can't even look up a Ringgold ID publicly, unless you can register for a 7-day free trial and look it up and get like a small thing. So if we were to convince Copyright Clearance Center to let us do that mapping in Roar IDs, we couldn't link to anything unless CCC opened up at least the top level of Ringgold identifiers. What I think we would be open to would be having Roar IDs in Ringgold. I mean, who knows? Maybe they've already done it. I haven't actually looked. Recently, I can't tell because I can't see them.
I know it's such a tricky question. So thank you for trying to answer it.
That's the best I can do. Yeah.
No,
and I will say too. I mean, Crossref does not currently allow Ringgold IDs. Pretty much, pretty much because they aren't open. You can't link to them. So while you can send text-only affiliation data to Crossref, and you can use other IDs, you can use ISNI, and I've forgotten what the other one is. But there's no linking available, which is really sort of important for the Crossref API. So if you want to send persistent identifiers for affiliations to Crossref, you can't use Ringgold for that. So,
Thank
anyway.
you.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions? Come on up. Sure. All right. So all our panelists, I believe, will be around. So if you wanted to come up and ask them an individualized question or get that email address from Alexis, please feel free to do so. Thank you, everyone, for bearing with us with our technical difficulties, but I hope that you learned a lot. My rule is always learning at least 2 things that I've never known before, and that's my goal. I have the low bar. So my name is Kelly Gonzalez, and I thank you for coming, and enjoy the rest of your day.